What if I told you that the very thing destroying your peace of mind isn't what you think it is? You're probably sitting there right now, stressed about tomorrow's meeting, worried about your relationship, anxious about money, obsessing over that text message you sent 3 hours ago. But here's the brutal truth nobody wants to face. Your suffering isn't coming from these external things. It's coming from your desperate, suffocating need to control every single aspect of your existence. You've been sold a lie. Society convinced you that happiness comes from having all the answers, from knowing exactly where you're headed, from being absolutely certain about every decision you make. But what if this obsession with certainty is actually the poison that's slowly killing your soul? I want you to picture something with me. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a rushing river, trying to hold back the water with your bare hands. The harder you push, the more violently it crashes over you. That's exactly what you're doing with your life right now. You're fighting a war you can never win against forces that were never meant to be controlled. But before you click away thinking this is just another feel-good philosophy video, let me tell you about a man who figured this out 500 years ago. A French thinker who looked straight into the chaos of human existence, and instead of running away, he did something revolutionary. He embraced it. His name was Michel de Montaigne, and his insights are about to shatter everything you believe about how life should work. If what I'm saying is already hitting you in the gut, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what we're about to explore together isn't just theory. It's a complete rewiring of how you relate to uncertainty, anxiety, and the beautiful mess of being human. Now, let me ask you something personal. How much energy do you waste every single day trying to predict what's going to happen next? How many hours do you spend crafting perfect plans that reality laughs at and destroys? How often do you lie awake at night, your mind spinning like a hamster wheel, trying to solve problems that don't even exist yet? You see, most people are walking around like emotional prisoners, chained to this idea that they need to have everything figured out. They think that if they just plan hard enough, worry intensely enough, control precisely enough, they'll finally achieve that mythical state called having it all together. But here's what nobody tells you: that state doesn't exist. It's a mirage. And chasing it is what's making you miserable. Montaigne understood something that modern psychology took centuries to catch up with. He realized that the human mind isn't designed to carry the weight of absolute certainty. We're not computers running on logical programming. We're dynamic, flowing, constantly changing beings trying to navigate an unpredictable world. And when we fight against this fundamental truth, we create our own personal hell. Think about it. When was the last time you allowed yourself to simply not know something without immediately scrambling to find an answer? When did you last sit with uncertainty without feeling like you were failing at life? Most of us can't even remember because we've been conditioned to treat doubt like a disease that needs to be cured immediately. But Montaigne had a different approach. He made friends with uncertainty. He wrote essays not to prove points but to explore thoughts. He questioned his own beliefs, changed his mind regularly, and openly admitted when he was confused or contradictory. And you know what happened? Instead of falling apart, he found a kind of freedom that most people never experience. Here's where it gets interesting. While everyone around him was building rigid philosophical systems and claiming to have unlocked the secrets of the universe, Montaigne was asking a much simpler question. What do I know? Not as a rhetorical device, but as a genuine inquiry into the limits of human understanding. And his answer was both humbling and liberating. Not much, and that's perfectly fine. This wasn't intellectual humility for show. This was a man who discovered that admitting ignorance wasn't a weakness, it was a superpower. When you stop pretending to know things you don't actually know, when you quit maintaining the exhausting facade of having it all figured out, something magical happens. The pressure disappears. The anxiety loosens its grip. You can finally breathe. But let's get real for a moment. I know what you're thinking. This sounds nice in theory, but I live in the real world. I have bills to pay, relationships to maintain, goals to achieve. I can't just float around in philosophical uncertainty. And you're absolutely right. This isn't about becoming a passive observer of your own life. It's about changing your relationship with the things you can't control so you can focus your energy on the things you actually can influence. The truth is, you're already living with uncertainty whether you admit it or not. You just don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You can't guarantee other people's reactions. You can't prevent every possible failure or loss. The only difference is whether you're going to exhaust yourself fighting this reality or learn to work with it. Montaigne showed us a third option. Instead of either controlling everything or giving up completely, he demonstrated how to engage with life fully while holding plans lightly. He lived with passion and purpose, but he didn't demand guarantees from the universe. He made decisions based on the best information available, then adapted when circumstances changed. And they always changed. This is where most self-help approaches get it completely wrong. They tell you to think positive, or manifest your reality, or take control of your destiny. But these are just sophisticated forms of the same old control obsession, dressed up in prettier language. They're still based on the fundamental lie that you can force life to comply with your preferences if you just try hard enough. What Montaigne offers is something much more radical and much more practical. He offers you permission to be human. Permission to not have all the answers. Permission to change your mind. Permission to be confused sometimes. Permission to let go of the impossible burden of being right about everything all the time. And here's the paradox that'll blow your mind. The moment you stop demanding certainty from life is the moment you start actually living. When you're not constantly braced for the next crisis, not perpetually preparing for disasters that may never come, not endlessly rehearsing conversations that might never happen, you become present. You become available to the actual experience of being alive instead of the mental simulation of it. But understanding this intellectually is just the beginning. The real transformation happens when you start practicing it. And that's exactly what we're going to dive into next. Because Montaigne didn't just philosophize about uncertainty. He developed practical ways to live with it that you can start using today. Let me paint you a picture of what this looks like in real life. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning without immediately reaching for your phone to check if the world has changed overnight. Imagine having a conversation without mentally rehearsing your next response. Imagine making a decision based on what feels right now instead of trying to predict every possible outcome 10 years from now. This isn't fantasy. This is how Montaigne actually lived. He wrote about his daily experiences, his changing thoughts, his evolving perspectives with a level of honesty that was shocking for his time. He didn't present himself as a wise sage dispensing eternal truths. He showed up as a fellow human being figuring it out as he went along. And that's exactly what you need to hear right now. You don't need to become some enlightened guru who has transcended all human concerns. You just need to stop fighting against your own humanity. You need to recognize that being confused sometimes, changing your mind occasionally, and not having a perfect plan for everything doesn't make you weak or unsuccessful. It makes you real. The modern world has trained you to see uncertainty as the enemy. Every app, every system, every institution promises to give you more control, more predictability, more security. But notice what's actually happening to people who buy into this promise. They're more anxious than ever, more depressed than ever, more disconnected from themselves and others than ever, because the promise is false. You cannot think your way to certainty. You cannot plan your way to security. You cannot control your way to peace. These approaches don't work because they're based on a fundamental misunderstanding of what it means to be human in an uncertain world. Here's what actually works, and this is where Montaigne gets practical. First, you start observing yourself without judgment. Not analyzing, not fixing, not improving, just watching. Notice when you're trying to control something that can't be controlled. Notice when you're demanding guarantees from situations that can't provide them. Notice when you're fighting against what's actually happening because it doesn't match what you think should be happening. This observation practice isn't meditation or mindfulness in the popular sense. It's more like becoming a curious scientist, studying the fascinating creature that is you. Montaigne spent his entire life doing this, documenting his thoughts, feelings, reactions, and contradictions with the enthusiasm of an explorer discovering a new continent. Second, you practice changing your mind, deliberately. Not because you were wrong before, but because new information, new experiences, new perspectives naturally lead to new conclusions. Montaigne wrote multiple essays where he directly contradicted things he'd written earlier. He didn't see this as embarrassing or inconsistent. He saw it as evidence that he was still growing, still learning, still alive. Third, you experiment with letting go. Start small. Maybe it's accepting that you can't control how long the line at the grocery store takes. Maybe it's agreeing to plans without knowing every detail in advance. Maybe it's sending that text without obsessing over how it might be interpreted. These tiny acts of surrender train your nervous system to recognize that you can handle uncertainty better than you think. But here's where it gets really interesting. As you start practicing these principles, you'll discover something Montaigne knew but couldn't have explained in modern terms. Your brain is actually designed to handle uncertainty. In fact, it thrives on it. The constant mental gymnastics you perform trying to eliminate uncertainty are actually working against your brain's natural functioning. When you stop fighting the unknown and start working with it, your creativity increases. Your problem-solving abilities improve. Your relationships deepen because you're not trying to control other people's responses. Your stress levels drop because you're not carrying the impossible weight of managing the entire universe. This is the freedom Montaigne discovered and what he's offering you right now. Not freedom from uncertainty, that's impossible. Freedom within uncertainty. The ability to move through life with grace and curiosity instead of fear and rigidity. The capacity to remain open and responsive instead of closed and defensive. And let's address the elephant in the room. You might be thinking, but what about my goals? What about planning for the future? What about being responsible? These are important questions, and Montaigne had answers for them too. He never advocated for recklessness or passivity. He lived a full, engaged life. He served as mayor of his city during a time of civil war. He traveled, studied, wrote, formed deep friendships, and pursued his interests with passion. The difference was his attitude toward outcomes. He did his best, made thoughtful decisions, took calculated risks, and then allowed life to unfold without demanding that it conform to his expectations. This is what mature responsibility actually looks like. It's not trying to control everything. It's recognizing what's actually within your influence and focusing your energy there while remaining flexible about everything else. It's planning without attachment to plans. It's caring deeply while holding lightly. Think about the most stressed out, anxious people you know. I guarantee they're not stressed because they don't care enough or aren't trying hard enough. They're stressed because they're trying to control too much. They've expanded their sense of responsibility beyond realistic limits, and they're drowning in the attempt to manage things that were never theirs to manage in the first place. Montaigne showed us a different way. He took responsibility for his thoughts, his actions, his responses, and his growth. Everything else, other people's choices, external circumstances, unexpected events, the passage of time, he treated as information to respond to rather than problems to solve. This shift in perspective changes everything. When something unexpected happens, instead of asking, "How do I fix this?" or "How do I prevent this from happening again?" you start asking, "How do I respond to this in a way that aligns with who I want to be?" Instead of, "Why is this happening to me?" you ask, "What can I learn from this experience?" These questions don't eliminate difficulty or pain, but they transform your relationship with challenges from victimhood to empowerment. You become the author of your responses even when you can't control the plot of your story. Now, I want to share something personal with you. Like most people, I spent years of my life believing that if I just worked hard enough, planned carefully enough, and worried sufficiently about potential problems, I could create a life free from uncertainty and surprise. I built elaborate systems for managing every aspect of my existence. I had backup plans for my backup plans. I thought this made me responsible and mature. What it actually made me was exhausted, anxious, and disconnected from the present moment. I was so busy preparing for life that I forgot to actually live it. I was like someone spending so much time checking the map that I never looked up to see the landscape I was traveling through. Reading Montaigne changed everything for me, and if you let it, it can change everything for you too. Not because his ideas are magical or because he had all the answers, but because he gave me permission to stop carrying a burden that was never mine to carry in the first place. The burden of certainty. The burden of being right all the time. The burden of having to figure everything out before taking action. The burden of needing to control other people's responses to feel okay about myself. These burdens aren't noble or necessary. They're just burdens, and you can set them down anytime you choose. But here's what makes this challenging. Our entire culture profits from your anxiety about uncertainty. The news media keeps you addicted to crisis and catastrophe. Social media algorithms feed you content designed to trigger your fear of missing out or falling behind. The entire self-improvement industry sells you solutions to the problem of not having your life completely figured out. Recognizing this isn't about becoming cynical or withdrawing from the world. It's about developing the discrimination to separate what actually deserves your attention from what's just noise designed to capture it. It's about reclaiming your mental and emotional energy from systems that profit from your anxiety. Montaigne lived in a time of religious wars, political upheaval, and social chaos. Sound familiar? He could have spent his life consumed with worry about all the things he couldn't control. Instead, he used that uncertainty as raw material for understanding himself and the human condition more deeply. He turned chaos into wisdom, confusion into clarity, and uncertainty into a kind of peace that external circumstances couldn't touch. This same transformation is available to you right now. Not someday when you get your life together, not after you achieve certain goals or solve certain problems, but right now in the middle of whatever uncertainty you're facing. The question is, are you willing to experiment with a different way of being? Are you willing to consider that your need for certainty might be the real problem rather than the uncertainty itself? Are you ready to discover what life feels like when you stop fighting against its fundamental nature? Because here's the truth Montaigne discovered, and what I'm inviting you to discover too. Life gets exponentially better when you stop demanding that it be different from what it is. Not because life suddenly becomes easier or more predictable, but because you become more flexible, more resilient, more present, and paradoxically, more powerful. When you're not wasting energy fighting against what you can't control, you have so much more energy available for what you actually can influence. When you're not mentally rehearsing every possible catastrophe, you're available to respond skillfully to whatever actually shows up. When you're not demanding guarantees from an uncertain world, you can take intelligent risks and pursue meaningful goals without being paralyzed by the possibility of failure. This is the gift Montaigne left for us. A way of living that's both more realistic and more hopeful than the control-based approaches that dominate our culture. It's realistic because it acknowledges that uncertainty is built into the fabric of existence. It's hopeful because it shows us that we can not only survive this uncertainty but thrive within it. So here's my challenge to you as we wrap up this journey together. For the next week, I want you to experiment with one simple practice. Every time you catch yourself trying to control something that's actually outside your control, pause and ask yourself, what would it look like to respond to this situation without needing to control it? Maybe it's accepting that you can't control how quickly traffic moves. Maybe it's sending that email without obsessing over the response. Maybe it's having that difficult conversation without scripting every possible outcome. Start small, but start somewhere, and pay attention to what happens. Notice how it feels in your body when you let go of the need to control. Notice what mental space opens up when you're not constantly trying to manage everything. Notice how your relationships change when you stop trying to control other people's responses. This isn't about becoming passive or uncaring. It's about becoming more skillful in how you engage with life's inherent uncertainty. It's about developing what Montaigne called the art of living, the ability to remain fully engaged with existence while holding your plans and preferences lightly. If this exploration has resonated with you, I want to hear about your experience. Drop a comment below and tell me, what's one area of your life where you're ready to experiment with letting go of control? What uncertainty are you willing to make friends with? What would change if you stopped fighting against the unknown and started dancing with it instead? And if you want to continue this conversation, make sure you're subscribed to this channel because we're just getting started. The next video is going to dive even deeper into how you can build a life of meaning and purpose without needing certainty as your foundation. We're going to explore how the most successful, creative, and fulfilled people actually navigate uncertainty. And it's probably not what you think. Remember, this isn't just philosophy we're discussing. This is a practical approach to living that can transform your daily experience from one of constant anxiety and control to one of curiosity, resilience, and genuine peace. The kind of peace that doesn't depend on everything going according to plan, because it's rooted in something much deeper and more reliable than external circumstances. Your journey toward freedom from the tyranny of certainty starts now. Not when you have more information, not when you feel more ready, not when the circumstances are perfect. Now, in the middle of whatever uncertainty you're facing, with whatever knowledge you currently have, exactly as you are right now. Because that's the final lesson Montaigne teaches us. You don't need to wait for certainty to begin living. Life is happening right now, in all its unpredictable, uncontrollable, beautiful uncertainty. And you're already equipped with everything you need to not just survive it, but to embrace it fully. The question isn't whether you can handle uncertainty. You've been doing it your entire life. The question is whether you're ready to stop fighting it and start working with it. Whether you're ready to trade the exhaustion of control for the freedom of acceptance. Whether you're ready to discover what becomes possible when you finally let go.